The White House saves Americans $1.3 trillion in costs with the largest deregulatory move in U.S. history. The BBC ignites outrage by branding a conservative student killed by a far-left mob in France as far-right. A defense lawyer's politically charged t-shirt causes the judge to declare a mistrial in the Texas Antifa case. And an Arizona restaurant owner offers free meals to ICE agents, drawing crowds of support. We'll get into all that and your quick hits right now. What's up, guys? Welcome to the wrap-up, where we break down the biggest stories of the week that you might have missed but need to know. I'm your host, Selena. First up, the White House just finalized what it calls the single largest deregulatory action in U.S. history, rescinding the 2009 endangerment finding. The move essentially removes all federal greenhouse gas emission standards for motor vehicles and engines. The administration estimates this reversal will save over $1.3 trillion in regulatory costs. The Environmental Protection Agency says it will eliminate manufacturers' obligations to measure or control greenhouse gas emissions for highway vehicles, cut average vehicle prices by $2,400, and end de facto EV mandates to restore consumer choice. Officials clarified that this action targets only greenhouse gases and leaves existing rules on traditional pollutants like smog and soot unchanged. The EPA's new determination stems from a reevaluation of Clean Air Act Section 202A. Administrator Lee Zeldin concluded that Congress never intended the act to authorize EPA regulation of global climate change. The agency also deemed prior regulations, quote, futile, saying they have no material impact on global temperature trends. U.S. Department of the Interior Secretary Doug Burgum said, quote, by ending the so-called endangerment finding, President Trump is unleashing American energy and making everything more affordable. Industry groups like the American Trucking Associations and American Petroleum Institute back the change, praising it for setting, quote, achievable standards and preserving gas-powered vehicle options. Environmental advocates are expected to challenge the ruling in court, but the administration insists major climate policies must come from Congress, not executive agencies. Up next, the British Broadcasting Corporation sparked massive backlash after publishing a headline labeling a conservative student beaten to death by a mob a far-right student. Authorities charge a group of 9 far-left militants with fatally beating 23-year-old Quentin Derailed in Lyon, France, during a protest. The BBC published the headline, 9 arrested in France over death of far-right student. Josh Howie from GB News responded to the headline on X saying, quote, in 10 words, BBC News manages 5 examples of disinformation. Let me give it a go. 9 far-left thugs beat student to death for protecting women. The article stated that Derailed was beaten at the protest held by so-called, quote, far-right feminists at the Institute of Political Studies. The suspects who were detained are reportedly linked to a far-left militant group called the Young Guard. Among those arrested was a parliamentary assistant from the far-left France Unbowed Party. Unfortunately for the BBC, this isn't the first time they've been called out for a manipulative spin. In 2024, the corporation aired an edited version of President Donald Trump's speech from the Stop the Steal rally on January 6, 2021, combining 2 separate portions to make it appear he called on protesters to march to the U.S. Capitol. After Trump threatened a lawsuit, the network apologized in November and told him the documentary would not be aired on any BBC platform again. In our next story, a mistrial was declared in the high-stakes federal terrorism case of alleged Antifa operatives, tied to last year's deadly ambush at a Texas ICE facility. The Daily Wire reported that during jury selection on Tuesday, a U.S. attorney raised concerns about defense attorney Marquetta Clayton's t-shirt she was wearing under her blazer, which was covered with images of civil rights figures. United States District Judge Mark Pittman declared a mistrial before the jury was seated. According to Kira News, the judge told Clayton, I don't know why in the world you would think that's appropriate, likening the t-shirt to a prosecutor wearing an ICE pin. The Trump administration's first terrorism case against Antifa centered around the cell. The masked anarchists allegedly used fireworks on July 4th to lure ICE agents out of Texas's Perryland Detention Center in Alvarado. Court documents state one alleged Antifa militant yelled, "Get to the rifles," just before the group opened fire, wounding an Alvarado police officer in the neck. Authorities arrested 10 suspects initially. Former Former Marine reservist Benjamin Hanel Song, who allegedly fired shots in the ambush, evaded capture for a week before his arrest. 5 others took plea deals and are expected to testify. Jury selection is set to restart on Monday, and reports say defense attorney Marquetta Clinton left the courthouse with her civil rights t-shirt turned inside out. Judge Pittman noted she'll need to return later for a possible sanctions decision. Next up, in a time where many immigration enforcement officers are facing threats and hostility, one immigrant business owner in southern Arizona is supporting them with free meals. Jorge Rivas, a legal immigrant from El Salvador and owner of Sammy's Mexican Grill in Catalina, has made it clear that U.S. immigration and customs enforcement agents are welcome into his restaurant. In an interview with Newsmax, Rivas said, quote, "They can get a free meal not because we think they cannot afford it, it's because we feel the need to say thank you." Rivas explained for the past several years he and his staff had made it a point to welcome law enforcement officers at a time when, in his view, many have been mistreated simply for doing their jobs. Rivas said many people have shown up to support the restaurant, even as critics pressure him to stop backing ICE operations. Businesses in his area that openly resist federal immigration enforcement, he said, are behaving in a way he considers, quote, un-American. Recent reports show that ICE agents and their families have faced an 8,000% increase in death threats. But a January poll cited by Breitbart News found that more than a majority of American voters support the administration's efforts to crack down on illegal immigration. And instead of organizing rallies or issuing press statements, Rivas is showing his support by simply serving meals. And now it's time for quick hits. A Nashville charter school threatened a first-grade teacher with termination after he refused to read an LGBTQ book about same-sex marriage to his class. Because nothing says tolerance like threatening to fire someone for not reading propaganda to kids. A recent report revealed the New Zealand Defence Force spent 2025 running mock scenarios, training soldiers to respond to a global threat from a fictional Christian terrorist group, but none of New Zealand's 23 listed terrorist orgs are Christian, leaving many wondering what failed liberal Hollywood script they pulled that idea from. Mexico's education ministry fired the chief of textbooks, Marx Arriaga, for rejecting government-mandated school book changes after it was revealed that many contained communist propaganda. The self-described communist then locked himself in his office, live-streamed his protest, challenged authorities to remove him by force, and remained barricaded for days. A San Diego County Superior Court judge ruled last week that Rady Children's Hospital must continue providing so-called gender-affirming care, including puberty blockers and hormone treatments, to minors under 19, despite the hospital's January announcement that it would stop. The ruling followed a lawsuit filed by the California Attorney General, which claimed the hospital's halt to the procedures violated state law. After a quarterfinal overtime thriller, the U.S. men's hockey team beat Sweden 2-1 to advance within 2 wins of Olympic gold, a feat they've achieved only twice in history, most famously in the 1980 Miracle on Ice. And that's a wrap for this week. Make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment telling us what you thought about these stories, and we'll see you back here next week on The Wrap Up. Thank you so much for watching this video. In order to keep PragerU videos free, please consider making a tax-deductible donation today.